Well, good morning, Bob.
Morning, Bill.
We're back today. We're here in Oxford from our client conference out in Scottsdale, and it was unseasonably cool in Scottsdale.
Unfortunately, it was.
It's sort of like the economy. The question is the economy starting to heat up, or is it unseasonably cool?
Well, it depends a lot on who you ask. You know, the facts aren't really part of the issue anymore. It's
all rhetoric?
It's all rhetoric.
Well, let's talk about a little rhetoric. You know, we have new chairs today on the set. These are the big chairs.
Whoa,
right?
yeah,
and there's some people that have to sit in the big chairs in Washington. We have not confirmed a new Treasury Secretary yet.
That's
There's
right.
discussion around the new Treasury Secretary. We're in the process of confirming some of the new cabinet members. Some have been confirmed, but Treasury's not yet up. Is there a big job ahead of whoever's the new Treasury Secretary?
Well, there is. I mean, from my perspective, although at the client conference we had some dissenting opinions.
No unanimity among economists? Are you kidding?
But from my point of view, it seems like the economy is recovering, slowly, but it is recovering.
So after you've been sick and you start feeling better, any lift, you feel
good.
great. Even though you may not be able to get out of bed, you feel great.
Right. Yeah, I got a whole bunch of statistics here, and so...
I thought you said facts are irrelevant.
Well, I know.
So we go get some statistics.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, the NDR uses 4 measures to determine what the state of the economy is.
Okay. So the National Bureau of Economic Research?
Right.
Okay.
Real GDP, and that, surprisingly, is above recession levels. So it's better than it was prior to the recession.
That's good.
Employment, unfortunately, is still about 2.3% below the pre-recession peak.
That's not good.
Industrial production is still off the peak by about 2%, 2.1%.
That needs to come up.
And real personal income is about 2.5% off the pre-recession peak.
So there's less money in my pocket.
That's correct.
And what do you see happening on the road ahead?
Well, it depends a lot on what Congress does about the sequester. You know, there's a lot of discussion in politics about the deficit. And the deficit is, according to some people, the greatest national disaster that's occurring right now. And according to other people, the sane people, it is the natural expectation of what would happen in a recession.
Well, you know, we had 2 great speakers at our, well, I had many great speakers, but we had 2 well-known speakers at our client conference. Phil Gramm, former Senator of Texas, and Barney Frank, former Congressman from Massachusetts. And one of them said, I don't recall who, that people go to Congress or they go to the Senate and they're on a cause in search of an issue.
Right.
All right? And so let's talk about that as we talk about where we are economically and what people in Congress are saying or not saying about the deficit.
Yeah, I mean, I went back just out of curiosity to see where we have been historically. And you can measure this in a lot of different ways. And one common way that people measure it is against potential GDP. In other words, if we had everybody operating at full capacity, where would our GDP would? You know, sometimes we have recession.
So everybody works at least 40 hours a week.
Right.
That's a novel concept, isn't it?
Right now, we're at about 79% capacity utilization. But that's up about 12% from where we were in 2009. So it's definitely improving, but we still have some more capacity. But if you look at potential GDP, which is a common measure, it's reported all the time. Prior to Reagan, for quite a long time, we were at about, our deficit was at about 20% of potential GDP.
So our deficit, we were spending more than we were taking in. And we were spending
at about 20% of potential GDP, more than...
So we were spending 20% more than we were making.
Right.
That ain't good.
Well, it depends. I mean, you know...
For a short period of time, it can be okay. But like most Americans,
well, you grow out of it.
You know, there's no free lunch. All right?
So,
well, not if you continue to spend more than 20% more than GDP. No, you don't grow out of it. But go ahead.
When Reagan came into office, he was a big spender, and so he raised that up to 40%. And so he did some significant deficit spending.
All right.
Bush came along and did the same thing, raised it up to about 50%.
Bush won.
Bush won.
Okay.
Then Clinton came into office, and he actually had a surplus, and he reduced it back down to about 32%.
Well, that was good.
And then Bush 2 came into office and raised it back up to 40%. And then we had the big recession, the biggest recession since the Great Depression, essentially.
The Great Recession, as it's called.
Yeah. And under Obama, that went up to 70% GDP. So right now, we're running at about 70% of potential GDP, and that's our deficit spending. But government spending has been going way down over the last several years.
Obviously, GDP has been going down too.
It has. Well, it's coming back up now. In fact, GDP is actually, I mean, GDP is actually above where it was during the recession, but the economy has grown. The number of employees have grown, all of that, and so we're below potential, but we're above the nominal level we were prior to the recession.
So what does all this mean?
Well, it means that we're seeing a lot of different indications of improvement, but not enough. You know.
So we're feeling better, but we're not well.
Right. Residential investment, for example.
Is this in housing?
Housing is, as a share of potential GDP prior to the recession, was about 6.3% of potential GDP.
That's big.
It dropped down to about 2.1%.
So it dropped by a third. It was a third of what it used to be.
Right.
It dropped by 2/3, I guess I should say.
And then is now just starting to come back up, but just barely. Okay, now
home starts are up a little.
Up a little bit. We were in Phoenix, and Phoenix was talking about the fact that they didn't have enough land because of
20,000 lots, roughly,
and 17,000 new homes that are going to be built this year. So it depends on the part of the country, but residential investment is picking up, and that's a good indicator. That's a good leading indicator.
So treasury prices, which we've had a sell-off, are they going to go back up? Mortgage bonds, or mortgage rates, I should say, tend to be tied to the 10-year. Is the 10-year going to go back up in terms of price, or is it continue to be depressed?
Well, I was reading the Wall Street Journal this morning.
That's amazing. I thought you were only a New York Times kind of guy.
Well, they didn't have any good stuff.
And you figure the Sunday paper was out of date already, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the Wall Street Journal was sort of advising people that they might be real careful about going short on treasuries. Because the treasury price has been coming down a little bit, the premium's been going, or the rate has been going up, and evidently a lot of people are jumping in and selling the treasury short, and they're saying, you know, it might be a little early for that, right?
And of course, the treasuries, at least they're a good proxy. If we look out 3, 6, 9 months, they're a good proxy for what is happening. They've historically been, for our listeners out there that may not be in the bond area, U.S. Treasury, especially the 10-year, has been a great proxy for safe haven.
Right.
And so if you are averse to risk, one of the things you want to do as an investor is park your money in a safe haven. That has historically been U.S. Treasuries and typically the 10-year.
Right, right. So, bottom line, there are a lot of good indicators. We're seeing some retail sales are up 4.7% from a year ago in January. We're seeing that unemployment claims dropped last week down to 341,000.
That's good. There's still 341,000.
That's a lot.
But it's a drop.
Job openings have been pretty much unchanged lately. Consumer sentiment is up. Mortgage rates have been low and stable. Property values are coming up. Foreclosures are down. Residential investments up. Hotel occupancy rate is back up to where it was pre-recession. A lot of good indicators, not a lot of negative indicators, a lot of sort of so-so indicators and some positive indicators.
Is there any correlation between business activity and applications for law school?
I would think there is a lot, but it's an inverse relation.
So the fewer applications, the better the business climate?
Yeah, I would think
well, then
so.
that would be positive because law school applications, the Wall Street Journal reported a few days ago, way down.
Oh, that's good news, yeah.
So,
all right.
Anything else you want to tell us this morning?
Well, you know, the problem bank list of banks that are potentially going under was up to over 1,000 at one point. A lot of them have failed, but recently that number of problem banks has been going down, and not just because they're failing.
That's certainly one reason.
So it's gradually going down. It's about 831 right now, and
that's a good thing.
So that's been coming
People
down.
working through their problems.
And you know, it's been some. It used to be that we would have 5 or 6 every Friday that they were announcing that were being taken over.
Now it's one every few weeks.
One every 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, positive news.
Well, we're out of time, Bob. This is FNC's Morning View. I'm Bill Rayburn with Bob Dorsey. We hope you all have a fantastic week.